I once asked a bird, "How is it that you fly in this gravity of darkness?" The bird responded, "Love lifts me." And that's by Hafiz. Hafiz. We just went rounds figuring out the pronunciation here. But with that, welcome to the House Einstein podcast.
And this is House Einstein podcast 110. I'm your host, Osman Parvez, and with me is my co-host, Hamish Crabb. And if you are new to the podcast, we don't typically discuss Persian poetry, but it felt apropos for what's happening in the world to lead with that as an opening to this week's pod. And I think it's also important to just take a minute to acknowledge what's happening in the world before we jump into our normal podcast content and recognize the people that are putting themselves in harm's way in our military, the 6 service members who have already lost their lives on the U.S. side, as well as a much, much higher number on the Iranian side, most of whom are probably young people that have very little to do with the decisions of usually older men. And I'm not saying these decisions are wrong or right. We're not going there. This is not a podcast about politics. For that type of conversation, take us out for coffee or something stronger, and we're happy to have that conversation with anybody that would like to. But
we're sticking to the loss of life here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just important to acknowledge the loss of life, to be present to that, the gravity of war with Iran and the uncertainty of what might happen from this point forward. And it's a really big deal. And for sure, a lot of gratitude to our service members for putting their lives on the line for us. And they don't get to make the decisions. Just remember that. They're not the ones calling the shots. They didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
But they are executing the orders of their leadership.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about our table of contents for this week's podcast. And we'll do a little intro here about what our mission is. And at the House Einstein brokerage, which sponsors this podcast, our mission is to help you make a smarter real estate decision. That's where we help buyers and sellers. And if you are a client of the brokerage, please pick up the phone and call your agent for advice, which might even include me if I'm your agent. But if you're just a listener to this podcast, please do not make any real estate decisions or any other major decisions, financial decisions, relationship decisions on anything you hear in this podcast. This podcast is entertainment. And I've been in the real estate world for well over 20 years. Prior to that, I worked in financial analysis. Hamish has been with the brokerage for a number of years as well and has tremendous experience doing what he does, because most agents don't see nearly the deal volume that he sees every year. He sees so many contracts and is involved in so many negotiations, and so brings a breadth of expertise from all of that experience. And then our topics today, we're going to talk about buyer fallacies. And so primarily this is a core topic, the closing table topic, that's all about negotiation and some of the big mistakes that we see buyers in particular make, and that we do our best to try to keep our clients from making. So we're going to go through some of those big mistakes, and hopefully that adds a lot of value for you as a listener. And if you're a client, you might get a sense of how we approach our work when we represent you as your buyer's agent. And then
from an entertainment standpoint.
From an entertainment standpoint, of course. This is just entertainment. And then Tales from the Trenches, we're going to talk about one of the hidden benefits that real estate agents get from our profession. And then we're going to talk about market conditions, specifically in Eldorado Canyon. And I'll be quite honest, I have sold one property in Eldorado Canyon in 20 years, right? This is a very, very
curveball
rare
location.
Curveball of a location, small neighborhood, it's outside of the city of Boulder, but it is really unique in its history, and the market conditions for this could be very interesting. We're going to learn about it together. I'm going to do it in real time and hopefully pop out some insights that could help you get a sense of what is this quirky little market outside of Boulder. And then we've got our usual segment on shameless self-promotion. We're going to do it pretty rapid fire, and that's just where we talk about our particular client needs, buyers and sellers. In the news, we're going to be talking about the South Boulder Rec Center, which has a protest that will be likely taking place in front of the city council tomorrow. But by the time you hear this podcast, that protest will already have happened, and we'll know more about whether council wags the dog or the other way around when it comes to our community's priorities. And then carve-outs. I'm going to be talking about a really offbeat and unusual side topic of, I'll just say this is all about Celina master tents. And Hamish, what are you talking about for your carve-out?
I'm talking about music. There is a particular band which I will make you wait until the end of the podcast to know what the name is. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a theme. Osman and I talk about the type of music that we listen to and how it impacts our mood and our productivity. And I just kind of want to recap that for my carve-out.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more. Let's get into it. And I think the meat of this podcast is really going to be the closing table, because there are a lot of buyer fallacies that buyers make when they're out there shopping for houses, when they're beginning to negotiate, and they rely on their agent to guide them through this process. But frequently agents don't have the experience or knowledge to offer useful advice, and instead can sometimes make things worse by actually using these fallacies to push their client to make a decision that they probably didn't have to make, or may have given up something at the closing table that they may not have had to do. So we've certainly seen this many, many times. And after over 20 years combined experience in the brokerage is way, of course, much, much higher than that.
I'd say like fallacies as in kind of like misconceptions, right? And we'll dive into them, but could you imagine an inexperienced agent hears, well, I thought about this strategy, says the buyer, and the agent doesn't know squat. So they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And then it's the blind leading the blind at that point. Yeah.
I mean, these are just pretty big mistakes that buyers make. And one of the ones that we see quite often is when we're shopping with buyers and they see a house that actually checks all of their boxes, but they think it's overpriced. And rather than talking about when to begin negotiation, they just go quiet on it. And in the back of their head, I think they're thinking, hey, we'll wait a few weeks and then we'll begin the negotiation, because at that point, the seller might be more negotiable. And it's true that the first weekend, it's difficult to obtain a significant discount from the list price, because the seller is expecting a higher number and it's brand new on market, right? They've done all of this prep work to get to this moment, and now they're live, and the first weekend they have somebody offering them an offer that's a lot lower than list. If there's another offer on the table, your offer does nothing to move the needle. In fact, just makes the other offer look good, because now the seller is anchored to the lowest of the two offers and sees the other offer as a better starting point, and likely will just focus their attention on negotiating with the better offer. But once that first weekend is passed, let's say it lists on a Thursday or Friday, Saturday and Sunday we have showings. Monday, if it was going to go, likely the offers were going to be due on Monday. And if nothing has happened by Wednesday, I think that's the sweet spot to begin negotiating.
Kind of slide in.
If you want the house for a significant discount. But as you know, Hamish, having helped so many of our buyers, the bigger problem in Boulder real estate and many markets is finding a house actually worth buying in any given price range. And after over 20 years, I can tell you that most of the houses I would not recommend you write an offer on. It's sort of like 1 in 10 that we see that I personally think, well, that's a good one. And and we often will tell our clients that because we'll point out what's wrong with the house. So if you have gotten past that filter of, oh, is it even worth an offer? It's a mistake to just sit and wait for several weeks, because likely another buyer is going to jump in. And if they didn't jump in the first weekend, they're going to jump in pretty soon, because there aren't that many houses in any given price range and location that are actually exciting enough to buy. And it's not uncommon that they're overpriced. Mm-hmm. And so beginning the negotiation a few days after the dust has settled into the listing is not a bad approach, but wait and see means that you're not in the game at all. And it's a problem if you wanted that house. And so the better approach is to go ahead and begin negotiating, depending on what matters more to you, right? If you really care about the big discount, then sure, you can wait.
Yeah, where your priorities lie.
But if the priority is to get the right house, you shouldn't wait. And if you really care about getting a great deal, then you don't negotiate on new listings. You focus on old and stale listings, ones that have been on the market a while, where the seller is probably starting to wonder if this thing's going to sell at all. And the best time of year for that is usually the fourth quarter. But this year we saw some surprising discounts in January and early February on listings that were actually old from last year, and finally got an offer, and they capitulated. So the normal advice of negotiate aggressively in the fourth quarter may also apply to early first quarter listings that are actually stale from last year. So if what matters to you is getting the most dollar per square foot, or the best deal matters more than the right home for you and your family, then focus on older listings that have been on the market for a while, where the seller has a lot of equity. And we can see that in the mortgage record. We can see the last recorded mortgage. We can get a sense of how, whether they actually have been sitting there with tons of equity, not going anywhere. And look, all they can say is no, but you're much more likely to have a successful low offer accepted, or at least negotiated from, on an old stale listing.
That too. And, depending on the buyer, they can be very aggressive, right? Like seeing every house as it comes out on the market. You might have forgotten about that house that's still on the market. Now it's been on there for 3 months. And the calculus, I think, goes a little bit different. If you're searching for a deal and you're looking at these stale listings, in our market at least, we see the very compelling listings go quickly. So if they are stale, you might want to start thinking about, what do I need to do to make this actually a good fit for me? And depending on your agent, why us? You also would want to be having conversations about making a house that has been stale and might have some shortfalls. What can you do to it to make it not that in the future, or if you go to sell it? Obviously, location is a very difficult one to overcome, but some things like layout and design might be doable, especially if you're expecting a longer holding period than 3 years, which I don't even think we recommend to begin with. So
right,
the strategy is very unique to you.
Well, okay, one of the things that commonly happens, Amish, when we have a stale listing is buyers want to know what's wrong with it. And the answer could be that it was simply overpriced in the first few months of its listing period. And during that time, the seller needed a come to reality time period.
Yeah.
They needed to see other homes sell for less, and they needed to have a wake up call on the real value of their home. The problem is that, of course, buyers now think something's wrong with the house when there might not have been anything. It could also be the home wasn't properly prepped for sale.
So common. Yeah.
And I had one of these listings where the seller did not want to adjust anything. They did not want to paint. They did not want to clean. They were dealing with a family situation. And unfortunately, I was not as experienced as I am now. And I let that compassion for their situation override my marketing advice. And even though it was priced right, it wasn't selling because it didn't have the emotional pull of a home that's freshly painted, properly staged, and sparkling clean, right? Instead, it had dirty carpets, and that we were trying to do credits on, and all sorts of things that you would think works but don't. What really works is having the house prepped right. So the seller eventually would prep the house right, but by then it still has that taint of what's wrong with
psychological something's like a cloud over it, right?
So the fallacy there is being influenced by time on market to conclude the home is not desirable. And the converse of that is to fall prey to the excitement of other buyers overpaying. And you suddenly are dropping your discipline, ignoring what you agreed was your max price, and going higher because now somebody else wants it, so you do too.
I forgot what you called it. We were talking to clients like even just yesterday about that particular mindset. But for me, it's like kindergarten rules. Like a toddler will see another toddler with a toy, and they're like, "Well, obviously, I need that, right?"
It's social proof of desirability. Yeah. It works for humans too. I've often been told that men that wear a wedding ring are more attractive because you've proven to the world that you're desirable. And I think that's the same with houses. Yeah. And the trick is to not fall prey to that. When other buyers really want it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a great house for you. And because other buyers have looked past it, and now you have an opportunity to negotiate a great deal, it could still be a great house. You have to ask yourself, why is this house not selling? And maybe it's the price. That should be your first hypothesis. It was overpriced. The second hypothesis is maybe there were better homes on the market when it listed at that price, which is similar. And the third is, okay, maybe it just needs some cosmetic improvements. Can we put on our creative hat? Wouldn't you rather get a massive discount to intrinsic value and then spend the money with your own contractors doing quality improvements than buying a cheap flip that everyone's chasing because they get distracted by the shininess of it?
No, precisely. Right. Like, as a buyer, I think there's a lot of personal management you need to do between like expectations, your imagination, and what you can do with the listing, especially when it doesn't show well. And yeah, making sure you don't get lost in a bidding war is a pretty key one too.
So this fallacy again is wait and see instead of negotiating. And wait and see without a strategy attached to it is not a particularly good one, because likely you're likely not going to get into the negotiation at all. And just in the recent past, we've negotiated on a property that was a long verbal negotiation and finally got to a number after a week that worked for buyers and sellers, and we went under contract. So it works.
That was this one, yeah. The current one.
The one, it's one that I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going into detail on active listings, Hamish. So you can't even. We're not even talking about that. Okay, so let's talk about our next fallacy, and that is called anchoring to list price. And anchoring is a concept that applies both to the bid and the offer, right? So when they put the list price on, that's what they're saying they're willing to accept in theory, although California tactics are a little different. But here in our market, the list price is not sent out as a teaser to drive a bidding war. In the vast majority of cases, it's usually above what the seller thinks is probably where they're going to end up, unless they intentionally priced it low. And in certain price segments, the list price is just complete fiction. Like there's a very high-end listing, the luxury and ultra luxury, that list price don't mean anything, and the negotiated discounts can get to double digits on some of the higher end houses. And what will happen in the negotiation, let's say that, let's just throw out numbers. Let's say they started at $7 million last summer, and now after a year of being on the market, almost a year, 9 months, they've decided they've cut the price several times, and the listing agent says to their buyer's agent, "Look, Osman, I know your client wants a deal, but don't submit a low offer because they've already come off the price $1.5 million. It's down to $5.5 million, and they really feel the gravitas of that. They haven't lost anything. Okay, they literally the 7 was make believe, and the 5.5 million could still be overpriced. And sure, you can communicate that to your client, but if you're the agent and you're experienced, you tell them it don't matter what they thought they were getting. The real question is, what is this house actually worth, and what do we think we can get it for? And what's our negotiation strategy? How do you want to approach this? And it might be that this house is something you really want, and you don't want to mess it up. Or it might be that you could pass on this house because above $3 million, there's 20 houses for every buyer. So I think you can easily say, or at least 10 houses. Let's say 10 houses, not 20. There's 10 houses for every buyer. You have 9 other options. and you have all the time and leverage on your side. So you can let it go if it's not the right house for the right price. But we need a strategy that reflects market conditions and how much you want the house. And you need to trust your agent to do it, right? Because it's really hard to be effective in real estate negotiations if you don't trust the agent representing you. So the mistake is anchoring to the list price. And the list price, the old list price in particular, and the new list price as well, don't really mean anything. But humans anchor. So when you submit a low offer, the seller also will anchor to that low offer. And now the magic ingredient becomes time. If we typically expect them to reject the offer in most of our negotiations, or to counter at close to their bottom line with some reserve for inspection
try to get
items.
Some sort of response back. Start the dialogue, right?
I mean, the goal is usually to get a response, a counter. Sometimes the goal is we fully know they're going to flip us the bird and tell us to take a hike because the number is too low to even bother negotiating. And that's them, in theory, rejecting your anchor low offer, but they really can't reject it, right? Come back in a week or two and offer a little more and see what happens. Time is the magic ingredient to this type of negotiation. But understanding how anchors play on human psychology is really important to avoid falling prey to the fallacy yourself. And that is the anchored list price, which, the bit between often split the difference is where agents will end up between the low offer and the original list. And people like that.
I roll my eyes for the listeners there, yeah.
Emotionally, they like that too. And your agent should not be using these fallacies to get the deal done against you. They should be telling you these fallacies exist. Don't fall prey to it. And let's focus on defining success for you and getting to that success point. We recently had a negotiation where we ended up I think $100,000 below where our client was willing to take the house because we asked them what success is, and then we blew that out of the water in that negotiation, and it was against an inexperienced counterparty. So that's how your agent should be advising you, is not using the anchor to say, oh, hey, Mr. Buyer, they came back $100,000 below your offer, or $100,000 above your offer. How about we split the difference? If they're saying that, they're probably not a great negotiator, and you may have chosen your agent poorly.
This next one, playing to win. Short-term memory loss, but I'm not sure
you don't know what that is. Okay. Yeah. All right, I'll tell you what this one is. So it's very easy to lose sight of what your goal is. And that's why it's really important to define the goal in the beginning. And remember that for a real estate deal to happen, both sides have to accept this deal. And it can feel so I'll give you, here's the story, okay? In a bidding war, right? So you go over list, and you've curtailed some of your contingencies to win the bidding war against real other offers. And then inspection items come up, and the seller says, I don't want to address these inspection items because they're not really legitimate. And they might be right. They're cosmetic or visibly obvious. And then your client says, Osman, I hate this because I feel like the seller's getting everything and we're getting nothing. And the game is completely lost sight of the game.
It becomes a tit for tat, right? Almost.
Because now they're looking at this as emotional bids, and somehow they want to make the seller suffer. And instead of looking at it you got the house under your top number and you beat out all these other offers, that's winning. Getting the right house for you and your family is really winning. And in theory, the price should have been acceptable. And the issues that you may have found on inspection, how much is it really going to cost to fix them? And is it willing to walk away from this deal over whatever that number is? And usually that number is pretty small. And I'm happy to walk away and we can keep shopping. But a good agent needs to help calm you down and focus on the big picture, right? It's very easy to get distracted with they're getting everything, we're getting nothing except the house at the price that you said was acceptable.
Hold on, the house, right?
So let me just wrap up, and then I'll let you jump in. So be careful if you're playing to win by just trying to punish the other side in some sort of emotional back and forth. That's the wrong game. Okay, really, the game I think you should be playing as a buyer is getting the best house you can for a reasonable price that fits your budget, and maybe we find something that has been overlooked, that there's an opportunity to unlock value that you hadn't considered. That's winning in the acquisition game.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I can understand why it would feel like an emotional slight when you bring your objection to the sellers and you're like, I believe these things are wrong. And the seller's like, yeah, not for me, and that's that. I could understand the offense there, but like Husband was saying, it really is, you define what success is and you define what actually winning is. And at the end of the day, you are getting the house. And if this house is exactly what you want, that kind of stuff really shouldn't be too triggering. But alas, we are humans and we do have emotions.
We are very influenced by gamesmanship and feeling like we're being taken advantage of and not treated well at all. So this is why we often recommend to sellers to give the buyer something to go back with, right? The buyer's agent. You do not want to have a negotiation that's all one-sided on the offer price or whatever the terms were. Counter on something, but don't give them you want them to feel a little bit of a push-pull in the first phase of negotiation. It helps deals stick together, and it helps maximize the advantage of people feeling like they need something. And you have this not just in real estate negotiations, but frankly all big negotiations. And the negotiator says to the other negotiator, I need you to give me something to go back to my principal with so that I can show them a win on something. Because if they get no wins, they're just going to reject your offer, or they're going to look for a way to exit because they're so pissed. So it's an emotional game. Don't play to win, play to negotiate, and figure out how to make it feel like a win-win for both sides. And if you could do that, that's the magic of negotiation. And again, the big goal is get the right house for a reasonable price that fit the budget for you and your family.
Right.
And in Boulder real estate, if it's a really attractive home that's priced right, you're likely to have competition. You're very unlikely to have nobody else is interested. But even at the higher price points, not all the way up as much, but even at the higher price points, you're likely to have some competition.
Yeah, I think actually the majority of the higher price point deals we had did have some form of competition in a backup offer or multiple offer scenario. And come to think of it, good point. Yeah.
I mean, it's likely. It's not zero chances, and they may have just overpriced it, which is why there's no competition. And that could be in your favor. There was a listing that just went under contract this weekend. I can't talk about the address, but I can say it was in Spanish Hills. And our buyer felt like it's not exactly the right fit. But looking at the photos and the year it was built and the design of the home and the price of the listing, I was pretty confident it's going to fly. And we decided to wait through the weekend and lob in a call to see if we should go see it on a Monday. My client was not super excited about it, so we weren't rushing to get there. And the agent said, we've got multiple offers and you have an hour to get your showing in if you want this house. And we had offers due in 2 hours. It would have been a
preview.
And I laughed. I go, okay, that's not us. And I knew my client, this client has a lot of discipline. And once he's decided he's not super excited, other people really wanting it is not going to make him super excited. In fact, quite the opposite. He's going to feel like, okay, I'm glad I'm not going for it because it wasn't exactly the right fit. And I'm not going to be swayed by other people saying it's amazing and throwing cash at it.
Exactly. And that we'll earmark that one for a sale of the week. I think it's worth bringing up.
Yeah, once it closes, I'm very curious what that's going to sell for. Okay, let's talk about sunk cost escalation, also known as emotional ownership. So this applies in all sorts of transactions. And the classic maneuver is a car dealership. And what they do is they will give you the key. They will put the key in your hand. When they get out of the car or when you get into the car, they make sure you hold the key for a portion of time, and then they take the key away from you. And the reason they do that is it creates a sense of like somebody took something away and now you really want it back. And when you held it, you had emotional ownership of that vehicle. It's totally shenanigans, but it's very intentional that why they do it that way. And in real estate transactions, what happens is a different thing. Yeah. And usually it's around inspections. And sometimes we find things on an inspection that really should be a termination event. And rather than terminating, our clients say, God, I've already gotten so close. Price is right.
We've lost out on 5 others.
We spent $1,000 on inspections, which you can't get past. You can't get back. That's the sunk cost. You spent the time shopping, you spent the time negotiating, time writing offers, all of that is a sunk cost, and then you've spent money on due diligence, also a sunk cost. And you know what? If it's wrong, you should terminate. And I'll give you an example of one of those. That was when we had a deal in Martin Acres where the seller lied about flood damage. And all the neighbors told us about flood damage.
Oh, yeah.
And that was so shocking that it wasn't on the SPD. And the listing agent called the client when I brought this up, and the seller said, didn't think it was a flood, which completely
doesn't fit my definition of a flood.
It just shocked our clients to say, we're out. And they could have said, hold up, let's just extend the inspection period. Let's look even more closely at the structure and see what mistakes or what issues are here. But they decided they're out. And that was actually, it might have been an emotional reaction to being lied to, but it also, they ignored the sunk cost, which is the right move because you can't get that money back anyway. The quick question is, do you want to move forward with these people on the basis of what you now know? And knowledge is not free. Expertise is not free. That's why you're paying us. So,
and you have these sellers that are willing to obscure the definition of a flood. It creates that immediate distrust.
It's really hard to get over the emotional connection that you have, though, the sense that you own this house, that you're already thinking about moving in. We just had a tenant notify us that they are ending the lease and they are buying a house. We don't represent them, and we do wish them well, but I asked them when their closing date is, and their closing date's, it's still a ways away. They don't own it yet, right? Like, anything could potentially happen between now and then, and they clearly are already acting like they own it, which I'm happy for them. I hope it works out. But it immediately registered be careful believing it's yours already until you are at least past inspection at a minimum. And they probably are past inspection at this point, Hamish.
They responded to that email.
Yeah, privately to me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because
you want to copy.
In the email where you asked when the closing date was, you also said, please keep Hamish CC'd. Okay.
I know, and they immediately did not CC you. Which is fine.
I love it.
But the point of this is that if you are looking at a list of inspection items and they are big ticket items and the seller says, take a hike, we're not fixing these real inspection issues, don't let your emotional ownership override your rationality. There's always another house. And unless it's something so rare, right? Like you're negotiating on a Heartling in just the right location and you can't let it go. It's the one. I don't encourage that thought process, but if you insist that's the one, then you're going to give up some money on that negotiation and you're falling prey to the sunk cost escalation.
And I'll say kids are a lot of fun in showings, but they love doing this, right? They'll immediately run through the home and be like, this is my bedroom, you're going to be there, and completely envision themselves in the home. And by the time you go to the next one, especially if it's got one slight fatal flaw or a slight change, they're like, we're doing the one before. Right.
And they're invested in it. Yeah.
Kids are a whole thing. Mm-hmm.
Our next one is called the renovation discount fallacy. And this is really an interesting one because it doesn't affect all buyers, but it does affect a certain number of them that don't fully understand the cost of a reno in terms of time, the permits, and the headaches with contractors, the selection process, the design process. I just saw an amazing renovation by one of our clients that blew my mind. They started with planning to just remodel the kitchen, and they ended up completely remodeling 2 levels of the house and building a new floor. It really escalated. From the outside, it looks like a very understated house, and on the inside, it's like, oh my God, this design is spectacular. And I don't think they fell prey to anything, but I think that they also didn't really grasp the scale, because in conversations with them, they were like, yeah, it took a year and cost about 20% more than we expected. It's like, that sounds about right. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it costs people 50% more than they expected. And that's the renovation discount. You're looking at old houses, and in your head, you're saying, that kitchen's going to cost me $50. as if you could flip snap your fingers and 50 grand later you have this gorgeous kitchen. It's not that easy. And choosing a contractor, going through the permit process, choosing all the fixtures and finishes, dealing with the construction, moving out, all of those things really are part of that renovation cost. And so what we have frequently seen when buyers are focusing on older homes and saying they'll renovate it themselves, they often aren't fully aware of the costs of doing that. So on the flip side are the buyers that gravitate toward a flip, and they don't realize that this is lipstick on a pig, and it really isn't a well-executed renovation, and it will look old in 2 or 3 years. So it's sort of a spectrum for this one on helping clients see, like, not fall prey to either one, which is overpaying for lipstick on a pig, or thinking that the cost to renovate is going to be a lot less than it really will be, and helping
the
clients
external
understand
cost
that.
to renovation too. Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing if you're just doing carpets and floors. It's something else if you're doing windows, moving walls.
Yeah.
The
I fell
moment you
victim
move
to
walls.
it, personally. Yeah, like
Of course.
I'm pretty pro DIY, and so I'm like, oh yeah, all these bids and costs and stuff are for, like contractors or whatever. I'll just do it. But quality of life, like I'm looking at doing window wells, and it's in a room that's occupied by my friend. So I'd be, displacing him? Obviously that doesn't work. Do I build a temporary wall? Well, now I got to factor in a temporary, like things just have a tendency to spiral, and it's the cliche of renovation, but I mean, there's truth based in it. It's not as cheap as even I thought as a DIYer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as cheap. Now that you've done your own mini split system, that you may still not be willing to pay somebody else to do it, but you now at least know what it entails to do this work.
Mm-hmm. And there's totally things I would have done differently too, but maybe that's a carve out for another day.
And I think it relates though, because you're also paying for the expertise of people that know what they're doing and can do it. You're kind of annoyed at how quickly they can do it, but that's part of what you're paying for is that expertise, right? So window wells, last time I did window wells, they were $3,000. And I think I even got 2 of them for $3,000.
Dude, I hope that I can find that out.
Yeah, no, and my contractor, after he was done, he didn't normally do window wells, said, I will never charge that little for window wells again. And that was like 15 years ago. So I will tell you that I would go to companies that just do window wells to see where their numbers are going to land, because in theory they're going to minimize your construction time, and that's all they do, right? This is they're set up to get it done in a day versus get it done in a week. Okay.
Oh man, yeah.
So let's talk about our next one, Hamish.
This one, the false scarcity.
Yeah,
no.
we skipped it. We skipped false scarcity. So let's talk about false scarcity. The false scarcity fallacy.
It's one of your most read, or I don't know about scarcity, but one of your most read blog posts is the other offer fake?
Yeah.
Which is
the other offer fake? Yeah.
No, that's different to this. But a house like this only comes around every 2 years, dive in now.
There's some saying, like, there's liars and there's damn liars.
And then there's statistics.
But unfortunately, when it comes to real estate, it's very difficult to know whether this home is actually getting a lot of attention from other buyers. And what you will hear from a listing agent and sometimes the buyer's agent, if they're really not representing you well, is that, there's more offers coming in. You really need to get your offer on the table today so you don't lose it. Ignoring that this is a home that's replaceable. There's lots of other options, and you could let it go, or you can decide to jump in the fray for the first weekend where it sounds like other offers are coming in. You may not know if those other offers are real or not. And there are ways that potentially suss it out with escalation clauses that require the display of the other offer to prove the other offer. We've had really good success with that. But more often than not, the other side is not interested in showing you that, because it may be that the other offers don't exist at all. So what sometimes happens to the listing agent is that you have buyer's agents that say they're submitting, and then something changes the buyer's minds. I had a listing many years ago where we had 5 agents saying they were going to offer, and then 1 showed up on Monday. No more than
this
1.
Sounds familiar.
We
I think
went
I was
under
around
contract.
for this one. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. We went under contract, and I represented the seller, and I had to maintain the illusion of high demand and other offers that were ready to submit the backup at any minute, all the way through closing.
I was definitely here for one of these scenarios.
We were way over list on the contract price. And that buyer will never know. I will never mention the address. I will never even mention the client's names, because our seller knew what we were doing when we only got the one offer. And we didn't do anything illegal, but we definitely maintained the illusion of other buyers foaming at the mouth for the house. And look, you are not required to disclose any details. And if you're the listing agent, you're trying to maximize the sale price and minimize the hassle. And if we had told that buyer that they were the only ones to the table, we would not have ended up way above list. They would have terminated immediately and wanted to claw back. So you have to be careful with hold on, let me just wrap the sentence up. You have to be careful with believing anything that the counterparty's agent says. And if your agent is not looking out for your interests, you have to be careful with what they're saying to you too. So if they are playing the drumbeat of scarcity, okay, that they are likely not looking out for your best interests. If they are saying, hey, let me show you the data. Let's go into the war room, which is what we do. We look at how many other houses that match these criteria sold in the last 6 to 12 months. If the answer is 2 or 3 every month, let this one go if the numbers don't work for you. There will be a replacement. If the answer is one house in the last year matches your criteria, then you've got data that backs up scarcity, and then you should make your actions according to the data. That's what we do, because I don't like feeling like I'm being asked to convey information about scarcity that isn't backed up by the data. Choose your agent wisely.
Exactly. And I think at its core, we're bringing up these buyer strategic fallacies because they can be kind of leveraged against. And so if you're not aware of them and checking yourself as far as discipline and things go, a listing agent could be very clever and maintain an illusion, completely aware of the human condition to chase scarcity and certain other strategies. So that client that you're talking about earlier, where he hears about other offers and high competition and actually hangs his hat, kind of an example of a good kind of mindset in a sense.
Well, I will go even further and say really experienced agents are classic salespeople. They know how to manipulate you. And
that's
the listing agent you should expect to be trying to manipulate you. Buyer's agent should be guiding you through this manipulation, not
helping you avoid this.
Well, not necessarily avoid the situation, but navigate it in a way that's intelligent and doesn't fall prey to your own biases.
Yeah. Avoid being manipulated while still, especially if you want the house. Like, let's not fall prey into all these things, but you still want the house. So, let's come together on a strategy that'll get you it. Yeah.
Okay. Our next one is called financial. We have a lot. I think we're gonna get through them all. Our next one is called financial rationalization for emotional needs. And the way to think about this one is that most buyers, when they make the decision to buy a home, is primarily an emotional decision. Yes, it has to meet their price range expectations. Yes, it likely needs the right bedrooms and baths and likely needs the right location. But sometimes it doesn't meet those actual functional characteristics that they said were really important. And instead, it's emotions that are pulling them sideways into this deal. And maybe it's the way the house just looks. It's so turnkey and buttoned up. Maybe it smells like brownies and cookies because their agent told them to bake cookies the first weekend, which we tell our sellers to do. Go bake some cookies, because people are influenced by smells. And really, nobody complains about real cookie smells. Everyone loves the smell of real cookies. Glade plugins, opposite reaction. Don't ever use them. Side topic.
Yeah, truthfully. Yeah.
But what this fallacy is really to protect you against yourself. And that is, be careful that it's not the emotions driving you to make a decision to buy this house. And the way I look for it is when our buyers are looking at something that never matched the original criteria that they said they had to have.
Yes.
Right? They had to have a 2-car garage, and suddenly we're looking at a house with a no-car garage. And I hear them start rationalizing it. Well, we could probably just park on the street, and we don't really need all that space for skis and bikes and gear. Maybe we'll just sell some of our stuff. It'll be fine. And meanwhile, I'm like, hold on. That's cool that you really want this house, but it's my job at being your advisor to say, in the beginning, you told me this was a must-have, a hard requirement, and now you're willing to let it go because this house is so cute and so neat. But and in addition to making it hard to sell this house in the future because it has no garage, maybe it's too small. And I can see the problem coming because you've talked about expanding your family, and now you're looking at a home that's not going to be
expecting.
Yeah. Like, how are you going to make this 2-bedroom, 1-bath bungalow in Newlands work when you already have one kid and you're planning for 2 more? Like, what that says to me is I'm going to be representing you in 3 years to sell this bungalow, and we're going to be looking for a house elsewhere, probably Table Mesa is where we'll be looking next. And I'd rather sell it to you once, not twice. And so that's the fallacy, is letting emotions drive the purchase decision to override rationality on what your actual functional needs are. And a good agent should help you avoid that.
Had that exact scenario, covered showings a couple months ago, and the house was gorgeous. The seller did a great job decorating and everything. Immediately, like the bathroom layout didn't work out, and there was too few bedrooms, and there were a few other functional just wouldn't works. And they still wanted it, and I'm like, guys, like you will be selling this in 3 years when you run out of room, and it's gorgeous, but like there's a bunch of functional things that just don't make sense here. And
well, it's not our decision, right? And I want to be clear about that. What I tell our clients is that we are the advisors and you are the decider, which is sort of George Bushism, if anybody's old enough to remember it, where he said, "I'm the decider." Junior, and that is it was kind of funny. It made the rounds for like a week or two of jokes on SNL, and I don't think people get that joke when I tell them I'm not the decider, you are, we're the advisors. But that's really our approach, is advise honestly, and if a client wants it anyway, then we help them get a good deal on it. All right, our next one is called "Inspections are not a second round for negotiation."
The clawback period.
This is really important, okay? Because if a buyer feels like they were taken advantage of in the price negotiation on the first round, they are often looking for clawback during the inspection process, not because there's anything wrong or surprising. In fact, they're hoping that they can turn like a $10,000 roof repair into a $30,000 brand new roof, right? Because they really want to punish the seller for not getting a number they were happy with on the first round. And it's human nature, I get it. But the seller's position on this is usually, hold on, are these new discoveries? And what was the expectation of the condition of whatever system it is we're negotiating on? And is this an upgrade that you're asking for, or is this fair value? And so it's very easy to talk about things like roofs and furnaces, because these fall into the expectation that they have a reasonable service life left. It wasn't brand new, but if it turns out they're at the end of their service life or they're failing, well, then getting a credit for half the cost is usually what most people will agree is fair and reasonable. Expecting the seller to put a brand new HVAC system into the home that they've been using this HVAC system for 15 years and they thought was fine, or a brand new roof, is probably going to fail the reasonableness test. We're going to try, if that's what you want us to do. If you want to go to bat like that,
you're the decider.
You're the decider on the approach. But past experience tells me that the seller's agent and the seller are going to look at this like you being a jerk and asking for a brand new something, which is an upgrade to the house and not mitigating an inspection issue. Sewer lines are a little different. Sewer lines, you have to have a working sewer line. And if the sewer line needs repair, it needs repair, period. And that's expected to be the full expense of a seller in every negotiation I've ever been in. We've never been like, we'll take half the cost to fix the sewer line. In fact, not only do we need the sewer line fixed before closing, because we don't want to take the risk of unexpected cost overruns with dodgy sewer line repair companies.
And it sort of is on that line of like, good luck selling the place if it's got a shot sewer, right? To the seller is like,
right.
You're gonna need to handle it whether or not we walk, so handle it. Whereas like an old furnace is more of a tolerance of the buyer. Yeah.
And a good listing agent should be advising their clients on those along those lines. Like, you're not going to sell the house with a bad sewer line. Everybody's going to want the sewer line fixed. And so it's just you're going to have to eat the cost. And it's better to deal with bird in hand and the buyer that's saying pay for the full sewer line than it is to go back to market. Because when you go back to market, it's now a tainted listing, and you may not even get to the agreed contract price. Nobody pays extra for a working sewer line, but they might pay extra for a brand new furnace or a brand new roof. So there are certain aspects of the house that I think of as
value adds.
No, they have a short functional life. Right, roofs and furnaces, hot water heaters, these are things that have a service life. Windows too, they have a service life that often gets replaced multiple times during the life of the overall house. That's normal. Foundations and sewer lines are not. Foundations are sewer lines that are pass-fail items, and they have to be corrected before we can move on in the transaction. I've never seen a buyer be like, oh, it's got a bad foundation, no problem. It costs $100,000 to fix, we'll take $50,000. I had a deal that these are real numbers that were over $100,000 to fix. And what we agreed on was $100,000 for the foundation repairs, and the buyer will eat the landscaping cost, which actually was reasonable and generous.
That was, I remember, yeah. And that was fine.
That deal worked out. And that buyer, I think, is very happy. They've got an amazing house in a great location. But that foundation turned out to be jacked. And it took the seller 2 weeks to come to reality, to realize they're not selling this house to somebody else with a bad foundation, because now the listing agent has to disclose it proactively, and it has to be on the seller's property disclosure. And the moment anybody sees bad foundation, they're going to reach the same point that there's $100,000 of foundation repair needed. So we ended up closing that deal, and our buyer, I think, is happy. But it was a very interesting process. So the fallacy is inspections are not a second round for negotiation, but they are for certain things. They're not a second round to negotiate the contract price just because you feel taken advantage of in the first round. That's what they're not. They are an opportunity to fix known defects in the the newly discovered defects, not known.
Newly discovered.
Not known, newly discovered, not disclosed defects in the property.
And actually, on a quick note on that, right? Like, if you're walking in on your showings on the house that you ended up going under contract on, and the driveway was cracked, you kind of knew that when you wrote the offer. So it's not the most good faith action to object on something like that. Now, if it was discovered that it was cracked and therefore letting water seep into the foundation, different story. But where it is physical and obvious, right? Visible and obvious.
I call it the visible and obvious rule. If walking up to the house, you could see this visible defect, like cracked concrete in the driveway, it's very difficult to have that be an inspection item that you could see with plain eyes the moment you walked up to the house. So what happens is, if a seller feels like you're being disingenuous or ridiculous, you usually get less, right? I always think about Willy Wonka, yelling at Charlie in the chocolate factory about licking the gobstopper and damaging the roof, and he's like, and you get nothing, and he's all emotional, right? And that's what I visualize when you ask for ridiculous things on an inspection and objection. Seller's first reaction is to pull a Willy Wonka and say you get nothing because you're so disingenuous and dishonest, and you don't even deserve the house. We'd rather sell it to somebody else that's not a liar. Right, yep. And so that's that's why we try to keep them from objecting to things that are not going to result in good. You get less if you act unethical in your notice to correct or inspection objection.
And we, in the interest of time, maybe we make this make a seller side episode or something. But also, sellers have limited leverage once under contract, and so their ability to say you get nothing or I'm not going to work, I think, is very limited. So sometimes, only sometimes, but you see some very emotional reactions from sellers because they almost feel trapped while they're under contract.
Well, they don't technically have exits to terminate the agreement. They need the buyer to terminate the agreement or default. In the standard Colorado to buy and sell contract that's commission approved, different in other states. So please remember, we're not talking about all states, but that's true. The seller doesn't have exits, the buyer has them. And so sellers can feel trapped in the transaction, dealing with an unethical person. And at that point, it's important for the agent to be the advisor, and also it's okay to have a seller yell and rant and foam at the mouth and be upset. Your job is to not magnify that by dumping fuel on it as an agent. Your job is to listen and then allow them time to calm down and then lay out their options in a rational way. And if they say, tell that buyer I said F you, you say, no problem, I'm going to convey that, and then you don't. Because all that does is dump gas on the fire. That's not good negotiation, and that's not in your client's best interest. Like, you're the one that gets to hear them yell at you about the other side. And then you hang up the phone and you say, I had a nice conversation with my seller. They're not particularly happy about the buyer's choice of things to object to. And they feel like the buyer's being a little disingenuous, objecting to these items that are visually obvious. And we're part of buying they're not getting a new house, right? They knew they were buying a 25-year-old house. But your job is to not yell and scream and be emotional, because that will send the buyer's agent into a tizzy. And
then you send the buyer's agent into a tizzy, and then you're going to send the buyers.
And if they're inexperienced, they will convey the info verbatim instead of managing the information in a way that doesn't inflame emotions. It's such an interesting aspect of our business, the advisory side of this, where we're trying to help our clients navigate this transaction in their best interest. And we also want if they need to vent, we can be their therapist and they can vent at us. But it doesn't necessarily mean we convey exactly what they want, because if you conveyed exactly verbatim, it would damage the transaction and hurt their interest.
Super. Yeah.
Okay. I see you're worried about time. I think we still have a decent amount of time, Hamish, so I'm going to wrap up. We've got two more to go through. This next one is called...
There's an anger management translator skit, and so I'm going to link that in, and I was just pulling that one up.
It's like Key.
Yeah, have you seen that?
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love
it's
the anger
so
management translator.
Yeah.
It is great. Yeah. Please link that. Okay, this next one is called cherry picking comps. And this is one of the reasons I like to do comps live in the war room with our buyers. Like, let's pull the comps list together. And let me show you how we're going to drill down to comps. And it might mean you're removing all of the other property types that are not the same. So if it's a single-story ranch, you're removing the tri-levels and the bi-levels and the two-stories. Because in an ideal world, you're only comparing it to single-story ranches that are in the same general vicinity, that are in the same condition, that are about the same size. Those are good comps. And so if they see us do that live, they feel more confident that we're not doing what? Cherry-picking comps. And some agents...
working against their favor, right? Yeah.
Some agents will cherry pick the comps. So often what I do with when we're negotiating, and I know the other side's overpriced, is I ask them, why don't you send me your comps? And they always send me the two or three they're cherry picking to justify the price they know is ridiculous. And then I say, well, okay, here's why these comps don't make a lot of sense to me, and this looks like a better comp. Like, we actually have a little dialogue back and forth, because I know they are struggling with this too, and they've chosen to cherry pick the comps to help support the price, and maybe that's their job, but our job is to not take their comps verbatim and send them to the buy side and say, oh yeah, it's worth what the seller says it's worth because of these cherry-picked comps. Our job is to help the buyer understand real value of the home, intrinsic value, if you will, and also negotiate against the other side being ridiculous with cherry-picked comps. So be careful if you're getting comps from the seller, or you're getting comps from your agent that doesn't do it live. Have them do it live so you can see how they got to those comps. If they're not capable of doing it live on a video call, you chose the wrong agent. And you could always check this. Yeah. Hold on, let me just add this one more piece. You could always test this. Say, all right, buyer's agent, I'm thinking about hiring you. Let's do a call. Let's pretend I'm about to write an offer and I'm asking you for advice. Let's go through the comps on a video call. Show me how I should think about this house. And pick a random house. And see how they do. And if it turns out, there's not a lot of comps because there's a mountain property, at least you can hear their thought process for how they can get to this valuation. Yeah, because that's what you're paying for an advisor, and you're not paying for somebody to just cherry pick numbers to justify something that is not actually justifiable. Okay, that's my take.
No, we'll be in comp calls, and I think we encourage it, but also enjoy it when our buyers are like, well, why didn't you include that one? Or, while we're live. And it's a little bit like we're in a flow kind of explaining things, but it's also good because we're like, okay, well, here's exactly why, and this is our thought process. And then that gives time for dialogue too between our buyer and ourselves, and we actually become more aligned
Right.
crazy thought process.
They feel more comfortable that we are representing their interests. They feel more confident that we're not trying to push them into something. And let's say you are lucky enough, you've got 4 great, perfect comps, same location, same house size,
nice.
Same lot size, sold within the last few months. And then you can pull them up individually on the video call and look at the photos. Even if you haven't seen the house, you can look at the photos and ask, all right, what's the value? What's the difference in the condition of the bathroom and the kitchens? How about the flooring? How about the paint? Yeah. You often can see windows. Like some of these houses have original windows, and you're like, those windows look really old, right? And the photos, at least to our experienced eye, we could pull a lot from the photos. It's still not as good as seeing the comps in person, but it's better than just ignoring all the differences.
Raw data,
Well, these are functionally similar homes, but you can't ignore the things that are visible in the photos.
At all, yeah. Final one.
Okay.
What do we have here? Please introduce this one.
Yeah. Okay. This is the fallacy of perfect pricing. And that's this idea that there's the perfect market price for any given house. And this is a very common fallacy. You see it all over the place. Some people, there's also a concept of a market clearing price, that it'll all sell at this price point, right? This is it's for inventory, but the concept is the same. And that's this misconception around a number versus a defensible range. I know it says defensible ranch. That's a typo.
Okay, that explains.
It's a defensible range. And so your agent should be helping you understand what we would call a defensible range to the market value of the home that you've negotiated versus dialing in the exact perfect price. And the same thing is true when you're listing a home for sale. And what we typically do is give our clients what I think of as the defensible range of what we think the home is worth. And then let's do all the improvements, prep it, photograph it, video it, do all the work to get it ready, and then let's talk about the competition, maybe even see the competition in person in a preview so that we can properly place your home in the defensible range. And if it's higher up in that defensible range, it may take longer to sell. If it's lower, it will probably go faster, but maybe you left a little money on the table. But ultimately, our client makes that decision on the list side for where they price the home. And on the buy side, we're in the war room. We're going through a reasonable range of value for this house. That's what we're trying to get down to. It's not one number. We think it's worth 1.25. Unlikely. We think the right range is 1.15 to 1.3. I know that's $150,000 difference in value, but you have to ask yourself the qualitative factors. What's the value of the view? What's the value of being farther away from a busy road or closer to open space? What's the value of being on the same block?
Good kitchen remodel. Yeah.
What's the value to you of being on the same block as your brother and sister-in-law and their kids? And the kids can now, this is a real story, they can literally run up and down the alley to each other's houses. I know nobody else has that value,
sweet.
But you may want to consider that the defensible range is a little higher before we begin the negotiations. And we'll try to get you the best price anyway. We'll talk about strategy to get there. But for you personally, this defensible range for this particular house is probably higher than anybody else because your relatives live across the alley.
Yeah. And that, just relating to the other, is not emotional ownership so much as your relatives literally live in the same neighborhood. So it is a little bit worth it more.
I think it's still
work that one out.
That's not the sunk cost escalation fallacy, but there is an emotional factor and frankly a functional factor that benefits you, right? Like you got a babysitter
and the kids,
the kids, like there is value there that is not just. And emotions have value, Hamish. Like emotional ownership is the sunk cost escalation fallacy. It's not that emotions. Like if you're going to feel better living in this home every day, looking at that view, and not look at the view of the power plant every day or whatever it is, the dump. You've got a choice between the houses are the same. Mountain. One looks at Trash Mountain and one looks at the mountain backdrop. That's emotional and it has massive value.
Yeah. All right. Good point.
Okay. All right. So those are our buyer fallacies. That was the closing table topic for this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. And now we're going to move on. All right. Our next segment is Tales from the Trenches. And this is when we talk about real experiences from real estate transactions, typically right here in Boulder. And often I tell tales that are kind of dark and maybe a little disturbing
lately,
or crazy stories from real estate transactions where we just couldn't believe this is what we're doing. But this time I'm going to share a different type of story. And I think of this as one of the hidden benefits of this profession. And that is introducing people to each other and helping people connect in the community. And also how often our service to our clients ends up with them becoming close personal friends. And it's just a lovely experience watching this circle of friends and connections grow to such an extent. And the tale yesterday is we recently closed on a house in Table Mesa, and one of our clients who also lives on that street where we just closed messaged me and said, "Hey, was that your closing?" Because they saw some social media presence of me mentioning the closing. And I said, yeah. And what's, of course, a little bit embarrassing is that during the whole due diligence process, I just spaced it. Right, we have other clients on the street. And yesterday, we went over to our clients, the older clients' house they bought a couple of years ago, and introduced them.
2022-ish, yeah.
Yeah, 2022, 4 years ago, and introduced them to the new neighbors on the block who just closed and have also a vision of someday improving their home like the older clients have. And it was just really nice. We only spent about 20 minutes. Our new clients brought cookies. I should have brought something. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm not great at remembering to do things like that. But it was such a nice meeting to just hang out for 20 minutes of connecting and introducing people to each other. And as I was walking away, I thought that, it's not just these people meeting each other that has been a lovely part of this transaction, but it was also the other family members that were involved in the acquisition of this new home and getting to know them and serving them.
Oh, they were there too.
They were not there. They were not there. But I was just reflecting on that other relationship with other family members. Like there's this, it's not uncommon that I've become the family realtor. In fact, we just put a dinner on the schedule with somebody who hasn't closed a deal with us in years. But I've represented multiple members of their family, and they continue to send us referrals. And it's not why we're doing dinner. It's because we're friends, and I so deeply value that friendship that I just want to connect with them as friends and have a dinner, two couples together, my wife and I, and the two of them. It's just I don't know. It just feels like I've become their family realtor. I'm their friend first, and I'm just honored to be in that position of trust. It sort of sounds a little like Meet the Family or whatever, where they're like the circle of trust. You're either in or out of the circle of trust. But it actually is true. There really is a circle of trust. And I would not violate that. I mean, I wouldn't violate trust anyway. But when I know that like they're trusting me to offer honest advice, it's a long-lasting relationship. It's multi-generational. I'm friends with the parents. I'm friends with the adult children. I've even met the grandkids. Like I feel like there's this sense of service obligation that like to do better, to constantly do better and serve them better, irrespective of whether it's a good deal for House Einstein or not. And that's, I feel like that is something that new agents have no idea about when they get into this business. Like they think I can do 2 or 3 deals a year and make as much money as I make in my normal job.
Go travel for the rest of it. Yeah.
Look at all the free time I'll have. And I fell prey to that fallacy myself, thinking, oh yeah, I'll have so much free time. Haha, that's quite the joke. I do get more vacay than most people, but I also am often working on vacay, so I don't even know if it counts fully as vacay. I just happen to not be here while I'm working.
Yeah.
So it was such a lovely experience, and this just happened yesterday, and I just wanted to mention it, that it just warms the cockles of your heart. It just feels like there's a resonance, an emotional resonance for being of service to multiple generations, and also being of service in ways that are non-conventional, like introducing people to others in the neighborhood that are lovely humans that can help introduce them to even other people in the neighborhood. So that's something that was a lovely thing yesterday.
As much as I can speak to that, I'm evidently a pretty young guy, especially in the real estate realm. And so for me, it's one of the more enjoyable parts of this is especially like when I'm on showings and getting to know clients, and I can make recommendations to like restaurants or recreation or things like that, and it properly resonates, and they're interested in it, I'm like, oh, cool. Like we deal with relocation clients, and especially when they're new to the area, they know they want to be living in, say, Boulder, but they don't really know where to start. And I do have the experience and the ability to kind of help them get a footing or get a feel for the area. It's a very nice feeling. Yeah, it is it warms the heart.
I mean, part of that is because you've been behind the camera of all these listing videos,
dude,
and all these neighborhood videos. Like we've got like 15 neighborhood videos or something like that, which really helps you understand our community.
Oh my gosh,
and the pros and cons of it, of different locations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get to do a lot of parroting, and then like I've got a personal best euros and Boulder list, and that one I'm always happy to share with people.
All right, are you ready to move on to market conditions?
Yeah, this one will be an interesting one. While you set up Iris, do you want me to do a little background on Eldorado Canyon?
Sure. I mean, iRes won't take me very long to set up, so why don't you do the background, and then we'll share screen. Go for it.
All right, so Boulder, to the south and to the west, there is a little canyon kind of in the mountains as you're looking at it, and that is called Eldorado Canyon. There's fairly limited signage to it, and the way to get there is you drive past the most expensive gas station in probably northern Colorado. It's the one with all the neat cars and random decorations out front, but like Osmond and I internally joke about the insane prices at that gas station. So I've put together, and I haven't put together, AI has a little bit about the origins and early development and everything for Eldorado Canyon. So from my understanding here, it's always kind of been a part of Boulder County. In 1905, which, fun fact, was 2 years after the first flight, it was a resort. So Eldorado Canyon Resort, there's kind of like hot springs and kind of recreation there. There is a national park there now. I mean, I think that was a Roosevelt thing. But eventually it's kind of turned into this... I thought it
was a state park. It's a national park?
Let me see. Good point and good distinction. State park. Yep, you're right.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyhow, fast forward to now. It's kind of gone through since 1905. It's got a fairly historic background to it, but it's this very quirky, almost Netherlandish pocket of Boulder County, and I'd hazard to say it's rather rural and out of the way in feeling, yet maybe only 20-25 minutes from Boulder proper. And I've just been curious about it. When I first started with Osmond, we had a former client reach out about a property that was, I think, dead in the center of Eldorado Canyon, the township. And I was very green. I leaned on, I think, Sophie and Ian quite a bit. But I just never even thought about houses there. And taking the guy on the showing and looking at the area, I was like, what even is this place? Because it's like a stark difference between almost dilapidated to very premium luxury homes and everything in between. So that's kind of my little bit of context for things. And Osmond, please come in and fill the gaps and provide a little bit more context too.
Well, I'll just add a couple of other neat things about it. It was called the Moffat's Lake Resort that opened in 1905. And that resort, became Eldorado Springs. And then I guess Dwight Eisenhower and his wife had their honeymoon in one of the cabins at the resort. And Mark Udall currently lives in Eldorado Springs. So it has an official population of 559 people. Okay, so we're talking about a very, very small neighborhood that's part of Boulder. And I think I've only sold one house that comes to mind in that vicinity of Eldorado Springs. And it wasn't actually in the town, it was in the run-up to the town. So I'm going to share screen. And this is how I would think about doing a market analysis for Eldorado Springs. And I would include, so you've got the actual grade area of Eldorado Springs, the town itself. And then you've got a bunch of houses that are kind of tucked into the hillsides up here. And then, which are on private driveways typically. And then you have some homes like on Prado Drive and Eldorado Springs Drive that are on these little side loops. And some of these, there was a subdivision at some point because these are pretty big lots. I think most of them are an acre, and they may even require them to be an acre. I have this vague memory about a subdivision project for a listing, and they were insisting you could or couldn't subdivide it. But what I would do to start the analysis is just draw a big general kind of map for things that might qualify as Eldorado Springs. And you can see the rip-off gas station right here. Okay, so that's what I would start with, which is going to include both. There's nothing on the other side of the creek, which you can see as the blue line. So you could just pull it in a little bit.
For the audio-only listeners, I'm going to link in the description below a link to the YouTube video that starts right when Osman's screen sharing. So you can just tune in just for that part to catch the visuals.
Okay, so this is our shape just for funsies. And now we're going to look for both detached and attached. And I wouldn't expect to see much. We're going to hide duplicates. Sometimes it doesn't hide duplicates. And first thing we're going to do is look at sold listings from 2 years ago to today. How many sold deals? And remember, the MLS is not going to capture every transaction. But the ones that are public record that are not on the MLS sometimes are not arm's length transactions. So in theory, all of the ones on the MLS are arm's length. And when you look at 2 years of sales, you get 8.
Wow. I was guessing 20, but
yeah. So let's go even further back and do let's bring this back to, let's just go all the way back to 2020. Okay, so we're now looking at over 5 years of transactions. And we're up to 31. Okay. All right, so let's look at these 31 for funsies. We did not include. We should include farm and ranch because some of these there might be a ranch property. Nope, there isn't. Nope. Okay, so 31 is our total. How do you analyze this 31 properties? Start with the range, right? The cheapest one was $269.
Oh, you've got to share that part.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, these are all sold properties, so I can talk about these. Not active listings or pending deals, but you're looking at a sold price. The lowest one was $350. That sold for $470 a square. It was a 1950s cabin. It's one of a kind home, right? Originally a cozy cabin, likely not mortgageable, right? Doesn't sit on a traditional lot. Accessing the house requires a short but strenuous hike. So this is a seriously weird property. We're not going to go into more details about it, but it's an oddball, and it had been on the market 86 days before it attracted an offer, and could have been on the market a lot longer. One of the things you always want to check is look at the older listings, and I see a lot more than that, right? It first listed in July 2024, and it finally sold in June 2025, so over a year on the market, and a weird little cabin that is perched right above the above the town area. And then on the other end,
hiking, I bet you're looking at the amenities, right? Do you have a sewer? Do you have a septic? Are you getting water? All
who
these
knows
things.
If you're getting any of those things, right? What a weird property. Hey, it's got a great deck though, and with Eldorado water service and direct access to the state park. Okay, you can only get there by foot. If you have mobility issues, I do not recommend it. Okay, let's now look at the opposite end of the spectrum, and let's look at the most expensive property, which went for $7.3 million. And this is a deal that closed in October of 2023. Originally listed at 8.2. Originally listed at. Wow, what's interesting is it had a long listing history, right? They tried to sell it in 2019. They sold it in the sellers acquired it in 2015. It was on the market in 2019 for 7.8, pulled off for a few years, brought back at 8.2, and sold for 7.375. And you're looking at something on 5 acres of land that is in this amazing little spot, right? This is backing to the creek, and it's a 5,800 square foot house with classic Colorado design, right? The design motif of this thing.
You got to share that part.
This is back when I worked on Nantucket, we called it the Nantucket model, right? In a buyer's head that's coming to own a second home, and likely not, it might be their 5th or 7th home, own a vacation home on Nantucket. They have this vision for what that looks like. And the closer you are to the vision of what most buyers want, the more likely you are to be successful. We called it the Nantucket model. I would call this more close to the Aspen model, right? Boulder, but in their minds, this very much that picks the, this is what a Colorado ranch with John Dutton looks like, right? Yeah. Minus, you're missing a few zeros from the acreage, but this is what it would look like, right?
Yeah.
100% looks like Colorado. Rough hewn stone, tall vaulted ceilings.
Yeah, the logs for the exterior.
Wrought iron fixtures.
Antlers and stuff.
I mean, antlers, right? Like, this is got a horse on the wall. All right. So that is the other end of the spectrum.
I'd say, too, that one's out of the town proper. Or the kind of townish area, right?
Right, but I still think of that as Eldorado Springs, right? The subdivision that is on the run-up. As you're driving to Eldorado, the town of Eldorado Springs, on the right side are all these homes, and there's this little side street on Prado that backs to the creek. And most of those homes, last time I looked, were not in the 100-year flood. So you get this like amazing riparian corridor, and directly across from that is open space. Is South Boulder Creek open space is sitting right there. So you're buffered by the open space to the north, and that's right,
to the north.
So it's a magical spot. There's not a lot of homes. One of the best deals I ever helped a client acquire, actually a client we might be meeting with soon, to sell their property on Greenbrier, their rental home, was because the market was dead and there was an estate sale on Prado, and we negotiated a killer deal on what had been an overpriced listing, and they had finally just gotten desperate. So here's another one that backs to the creek at 6.6, sold in 2022. Here's another one that sold in 2020, backing to the creek. I mean, this is just, so these are super rare when they come on market, and this is, if you were interested in this, I would tell you
7 days to offer on that one.
We need a multiple year strategy because you may not see what you want, and when you do see what you want, you may need to move aggressive depending on how desirable it is, because these things are really rare. This is a more rundown one that is probably not. Oh no, this one actually looks like it backs to the creek too. So here's an example of one that. It's really about the land value. You've got 1.3 acres of land, but the 70s era house is ready to be completely demolished and
super
replaced.
Original.
But 2.3 for 1.3 acre lot that backs to the creek in the spot could be worth it, depending on flood zone and a whole bunch of other factors. So that's the run up to town. And as we get closer to town, you're going to see prices come down because
the quirkiness increases.
Well, you're now looking at really tiny miners' cabins and stuff like that.
Little resort cabins,
exactly. And most of them are not that. Most of them are these houses, and then you've got a few that are quirky, funky things that are actual houses that are in town. This is a 2,300 square foot ranch that's right in town. The town is really quirky. I mean, I love enjoying the swimming pool in the summer. I've done that a couple times where we biked from Boulder. It's got a real historic feel. It's really funky, and this one's super. Tell me this is not in the 100-year flood. This is right in town.
It looks like Frank Lloyd Wright meets like 2000s architecture.
Sold right away, right? This is something that under contract, 5 days, closed in 29 days, and it appears to be a functional house, 1,500 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, with a garage right in the town of Eldorado Springs. Let's look at the pictures.
I'd want really quick. One of those stilted homes from the Carolinas to.
This is so close to the water. I would be so nervous about spending $1 million on this.
Even erosion,
But hell, it's been there for a really long time, so maybe it'll be fine. Okay, 1909, that house has been there. So for over 100 years, with a major remodel in 1981 or 82.
It's actually damn impressive,
So the first takeaway, right, is that there are not a lot of sales. So remember earlier in the pod we were talking about the importance of knowing your BATNA, your best alternative, and that comes from market data. So when you look at this grouping of market data for the last 6 years, you're going to see there's only 31 sales, one of which is, a cabin that requires a goat to get to or something. And then you've got some older homes that are close to the creek that the dirt value looks to be about $2 million without a house on it. And then the very end of the market, the high end of the market, you're in the into the sevens in valuation. So how do you quantitatively analyze Eldorado Springs as you drop below 700, you're going to get some really funky stuff. And there's not much, right? This is the really, really funky stuff. It's right in town. That I'm like it's on stilts. It's really weird.
Would you be able to end your share and then bring it back? I've got 3 dots of death here.
You're looking at probably, for a really weird thing that's right in town, is 630 to 650 probably today as a starting point, and then it goes up from there. And if you want decent dirt backing to the creek, you're looking at over 2. And there's only a couple of houses that were turnkey ready to go, and those were above 6. So if you buy one of these $2.2 million houses, which is mostly land value, and then you build something amazing on top of that lot, I think your capital value, your capital investment is well preserved. So that's one of the takeaways, is that the dirt lots can support homes that are above $6 million in value. This particular one was historic, so don't forget historic review, because taking this down could really penalize you. Interestingly enough, this went for a bidding war in 2022.
35 acres.
And I remember when this hit. Yeah, 35 acres is massive, right? This is a once in a lifetime shot at this thing.
4 days till offer. Goodness.
Yeah. That was an amazing deal and went very, very fast. So it's not a market where it's easy to analyze, because let's say it was a Martin Acres ranch, you've got at least a few comps every year that are the same standard ranch in an interior location. With Eldorado Springs, you have 30 sales in 6 years, but you do see a breadth of market, and you can see the difference between what's in town and the roadway leading to town. And you can also see that the larger lots can support very high-end homes. So there may be a dozen options on that road, one of which is owned by our client. And at some point would probably look to sell it. So if you do find that super interesting and you want a lockdown on a future lot in Eldorado Springs, this client's pretty sophisticated and might consider selling an option to buy. Which is what I don't
know
would
this
do.
client at all, do I?
No, not yet. You will, because we'll look at their Greenbrier property. But that's what I would do. If you knocked on the door and said, "Osmond, I really want this lot. Anytime you're interested in selling it, I would like to talk to you." I would say, "How about I sell you for $100,000, which is nothing on the valuation of these large lots backing to the creek. I'll sell you a $100,000 option to buy at this price point in 3 years or 5 years. We know that price point. We agree that's where it is. Or maybe I'll sell you a first right of refusal. So for $100,000, I'll market it, and you'll have first right of refusal. That means you're not going to overpay if my list price doesn't drag up a buyer. But if it does, you have first right. First right's tricky, though. I will say that, because the MLS has a first right status that could really screw up.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
that could really screw up your deal. So
strange. It's got the status. Wouldn't you just enter it for comp purposes if the first right happens and then list it? But I don't know.
I think because of how first right of refusal listings are treated. All right, so let's just get into it really quick and show you the data. Right now,
while we're here,
how many active first right properties are there on the MLS? There are
5.
Currently
on the entire thing.
1 in Boulder County. 1 in Boulder County currently active, and that's compared to how many total listings there are total. That's all the MLS. Hold on. Let's go back to Boulder County. There are currently 1,754, and there's precisely 1 that's listed as first right. And so I would probably say you may want to list it. I'm not telling you to do this, but you may want to consider the cost of mislisting it and then disclosing first right once you have a buyer that's interested. Because you will probably lose 99.9% of the market for listing it as active /first right. And I guess
and add to your days on market. And, yeah.
Let the MLS penalize you for mislisting it, if they'll even catch it. Which, how would they even know?
How would they know?
You can have a buyer's agent who's pissed and tells them. In which case, you could say, "Oops, my assistant Hamish screwed it up. I don't know what he was thinking."
Ah, jeez.
Oh, no.
That's it. Next podcast we'll introduce, and this is co-host Hamish, the Fall Guy, and with that, podcast 111.
Look, it's a question of conflicting duties. You have a duty to accurately enter information into the MLS, but I also think you have a higher duty to protect your client's best interest. And if you know choosing the status is going to massively damage the marketability of this listing, and you still disclose it to the buyer as soon as you can, you let them know, oh, you're interested in writing an offer? There's one thing I got to tell you. There's a first right on it. I doubt, the first right's from this crazy person from 10 years ago. They paid me for it. I haven't heard hide nor hair from them in 10 years, but they still have that first right. It expires in a few more years, but we just need to notify them. I doubt they're going to swoop in. Like, it's not going to happen. But if they do, that's your risk. And if they say, we hate that, we'll say, okay, well, I don't know what you want to do. Like, if they swoop in, we'll pay you something for your trouble. How about that?
Right.
We'll give you $25,000 if you get, kicked out of the deal. Yeah. Like, now, do you feel like you'd still submit an offer? Like, we'd work it through. But it wouldn't be like, surprise, we're under contract, and then you're not under contract because I didn't tell you about this first right. Like, you would know before you would know before the offer was executed.
Okie dokie.
All right. Well, I wouldn't necessarily call that a deep dive, which is what you titled this thing. It's sort of like the beginning to understand the market for Eldorado Canyon. And if you are looking to acquire a home in any neighborhood, you should at least do some sort of overview like that. Get a sense of the range of values. In Eldorado, it's 350 to 7.4. Which is $470 a square. Well, actually, the cheapest dollar per square. Cheapest dollar per square was $276 a square, and the most expensive was $1,700 a square. But that also involved a huge lot, 35 acres of land. So keep that in mind. All right. Yeah. Now you could also look. One more slice is look at only the 1 acre to 2 acre lots, and look at what those have been selling for. Because if your idea is to build a dream home, that's the best way to kind of dig into dollar values and also see what the future value of the dream home might be. If you're buying a jalopy that was built in the 70s, you can then look okay, well, if I put $2 million into it, is it worth $6 million? It might be.
Yeah. And Boulder County, are you subject to the same deconstruction rules as you are in City Boulder?
You're certainly subject to rules. It's Boulder. Whether it's Boulder County or the city of Boulder, you're subject to all sorts of law. I don't know the specific deconstruction rules for Boulder County. I know the city is really onerous. I don't know if the county is quite as onerous.
But yet another layer of due diligence. And yeah.
I mean, I think they would be because Resource is a county facility, not a city facility. So I'm pretty sure there's all, and it's a great question. You can ask AI while we're moving on. All right, lessons from sales of the week is our next segment. And we're going to try to go a little quickly because I'm noticing that we are actually running a little tight on time. Hamish, you were right, and I was wrong. Our buyer fallacy segment took a little longer, but hopefully adds a lot of value for our listeners.
So,
all right, our first sale of the week is 1095 Redwood Avenue. It closed February 27th for $4.3 million. It's an 11-year-old house with 5 bedrooms, 5 baths, and pretty generously sized at 5,000 square feet. Only has a 2-car garage, which is a little disappointing for the price point. It's in a neighborhood called the Granary. And people that have never heard of the Granary, if you're driving on Broadway heading north and you're going through Wonderland Lake open space, it's on your left. It's a little development that has some pretty nice high-end homes. They were all developed around the same time. I don't remember the subdivision process. I was here, but it just didn't really capture my radar. I know they didn't all sell right away. There was a little bit of a delay there. Mm-hmm. And now resales have been happening, and this is one of those resales. And I think, let me see if it's traded hands a few times or only once. I think this is the third transaction. So Granary LLC sold it to buyer number 1 in 2018. That name stayed the same. Oh, no, it didn't. It transferred. Well, the names are all mixed together, right? And I think it's the same people because their last name is the same. It's just there's a $0 transaction in 2019 to other people. So it could be parents to children, or I don't know. Maybe it's one of these big love situations because one of the names stays the same. Who knows what's going on here? But this is the first resale. And the family acquired it for 2.6 in 2018. They sold it for 4.4 in 2023. Homes like this are how do you say this? Highly desirable, right? Okay. Like they're still current. They're surrounded by Wonderland Lake open space. They check the boxes and functionality with a layout that works for the vast majority of people. The home's design features all that open space through the windows. The finishes still look good. So It's not a surprise that it didn't take long to sell when it's effectively turnkey. You can't quite see wear and tear from these photos, right? And that makes a big difference, especially as you cross the $3 million threshold. If we were advising the seller, and they probably got this advice from their agent, you really want to dial this in. There's a lot of competition above $3 million, and you have to look perfect. And the photos certainly do look perfect. So I think that that's probably what happened here. It was on the market just 2 weeks this time around because it had been listed last October and then pulled off the market. Listed originally 4.75 and then they cut it to 4.5 or just under. They withdrew it to refresh the listing, and it then went under contract 2 weeks later and sold for 4.3. So refreshing is not the worst thing in the world to do, but usually we look for substantive changes. In this case, it was mostly just the price change that changed. And what's funny is first they changed the price, and then they killed the listing the next day and refreshed it with a new listing. Like it was almost like change the price. Client calls and says, why don't we refresh it too? And they're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And so they expired the old listing and they brought back the new listing. Who knows? Unclear. We're not the listing agent. But great house, good purchase, I think, for the owner, because there's only 10 houses in here like this.
There's not many.
Part of the granary, is it 10? You can look it up in the subdivision plat.
Yeah, it was just... Well, what I was also going to say, too, is it's one of the ones that is further away from Broadway. I know we talked about one of these homes, it had to be like a year and a half ago now or so, but it was close enough where the traffic noise from Broadway would have been an actual consideration. And this one still you'd hear maybe ambient, but I think you're far enough away where it's not every single time a car drives down.
Yeah, I think it's far enough away from Broadway that Broadway's a non-factor. I personally would prefer to not be off of Broadway and would want to be less visible with a higher end house like this. I just feel like Broadway is...
And they're fairly sardined in this little spot too.
They are, well, they're bigger than the older subdivision to the south. The lots are bigger, but it's still a little bit sardined. I don't know. Privacy really matters to a lot of buyers, and there is something about ostentatiousness of visibility that most of our higher end clients would prefer not to be so visible, and they would give up the backing to the open space to have a little more privacy.
Yeah. Okay.
Next.
On to the next.
625 Concord Avenue. And what's interesting is that I just had this conversation with a historic Boulder person, and we were talking about where the end of the historic district is. And I had this distinct memory that Concord's not in the district, and she said, I'm totally wrong. It's in the district, and it is marketed as in the district. So I think her name was Beverly. You're right. I was wrong. We met at the Historic Boulder annual meeting last week, and Concord absolutely is in the district. And this is a 1902 era house with 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 4,600 square feet on an 8,200 square foot lot with a 2-car detached garage. And it's $2.7 million is what it sold for. It had originally been marketed in November at 3.15. Pro tip, don't market your homes for sale in November if you can help it. They pulled it off in January, and they cut the price to 2.95, refreshing the listing, and it was under contract 2 weeks later. And this particular one, I love historic homes, and this house is
cute.
It's gorgeous. I mean, sure, the trim color I think should be different.
It almost works. Yeah.
I'd actually argue I would prefer trim that's not the same color tones as the brick, but it's an amazing house with updates that I think are reflective of its historic nature, and things that are a little dated, like the surfaces in the kitchen, are cheap to replace, right? You could easily pull out that sink and redo the kitchen countertops, and I think you'd be there. Maybe a few light fixtures are a little old. Some of the paint schemes are a little dated. The bathrooms could be updated, but you've got the big heavy lifting, which is a functionally sized 4,640 square foot house in the district with a 2-car detached garage. And you're not on you're not on Mapleton, which frankly I'd prefer for reasons I just mentioned in the last one. It's a little less ostentatious. It's a little more secluded. You could easily walk to you could easily walk to Ideal. You could also walk to downtown. You could walk to Sanitas. So I think this is a fantastic house, and the fact they negotiated $250 off of it, and they got it for only $582 a square is, I think, a very good deal. So congrats to the buyer on locking down what I think is a fantastic house.
Yeah.
If you're into historic homes, and everyone knows I'm biased and into historic homes.
I'm with you, and I think too the photography is really nice in this one as well. The fall photos can't beat them. They're stunning.
Yeah. Okay, our next one is 405 Valley View Drive, and this is just out of the district, right? You're north of Dewey, and it also is a historic home built in 1900. Has only 1,937 square feet, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, and no garage. So I love the last one. I'm going to tell you, I hate this one. I think this is, well, maybe that's too strong. I shouldn't say I hate it. I just want to say that I think that if you could afford it, the other house, even though the kitchen's not as nice, makes a lot more sense, because the lack of a garage is going to handicap you in the future on resale.
Yeah.
There's a lot about this house that looks kind of frankened on, like there are additions that look from the 90s. It doesn't have historic, it doesn't, like the fixtures in the kitchen, the finishes in the kitchen don't look right for a historic house.
Yeah.
I think did I see this one?
People like to complain about the historic review board and stuff, but then when we're looking at a sale like this where half of the building doesn't look congruent with the rest of it, sometimes there's a point.
Yeah.
The garage is a huge factor as well. It's, I think, increasingly rare to find a historic home that has decent options for your vehicles, and that 2-car detached from Concord is a really nice feature.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I think is wrong is the square footage is wrong, because they're calculating the basement as part of the square footage, even though I don't even know if it's heated. Like, it's just, there's some sketchiness to this deal, and I would have advised our clients to look elsewhere. If they could have afforded to go into the high 2s, we would have been looking at 625 Concord. But 625 Concord is so much better of a deal if you had the funds. And in the future, it's going to be challenging to sell this house, and livability is also challenged because it doesn't have a garage. And this is one of those things where it's easy to talk yourself into the location. It's a great location. You're right next to Sanitas. And
this one went over list, didn't it?
I know, and it went over the last. Yeah, it went over list. It originally had been listed at for 1.895 in August. It sat there, and then they dropped the price twice during the year. By November, it had dropped to just below 1.8, so they cut $100,000 off, and then they withdrew it January 5th. They brought it back January 7th. It looks like January 5th to January 7th was refresh season, huh? No change in price.
New year, new me. Yeah.
And then suddenly, it went under contract on the 14th. So a week after, they brought it back with a refresh listing. And a couple of weeks after that, they switched it to pending status. And yeah, it sold for more than list, $15,000 over list. But there was a $16,000 concession. So really not over list. It sold for $1,000 below list at the end of the day. But
you think that's that clawback? Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't really know. We weren't privy to the deal notes on this, so can't really tell you much beyond that. But I think this was. I would have pushed our clients to look at alternatives because of the functional deficits of this house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're leaving. We're going to Lafayette.
We are heading out of town, and this is this one caught our eye because we're working with a buyer who's looking for a house pretty much like this, and they weren't quite ready when this one hit the market. 2812 Shoshone Trail. It sold for 1.5, which is $1,000 over list. And it was available for only a few days before a buyer locked it down. Likely there were multiple buyers interested. And what helps protect the value of homes in Indian Peaks is backing to the course. This one did. And it's reasonably sized at 4,700 square feet. They squeezed in 4 bedrooms on the upper, 2 in the basement. The basement's finished. 5 bathrooms total, and a 3-car attached garage. 2001 vintage, and it looks like... from the design perspective, it's a really attractive home. It looks like they repainted it, which is what we recommend as well to our clients, inside and out. It does not look professionally staged. I think a lot of what we're looking in the photos are actually the seller's stuff. I think the fireplace has been redone. That does not look like the original based on the stone type.
Yeah.
But basically, it's a big family house in a great location in Indian Peaks. And 1.5 is the right number for a house like that.
And a shout out to this. Yeah, go ahead. A shout out to this vintage of home is the amount of counter space in the kitchens. I mean, these are big homes, but the kitchens are just so generous. I'm getting envy. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a big family house, right? It's designed for 2 or 3 kids who play sports, have gear. They live an outdoor, active Colorado lifestyle, and the kitchen in the family area is the hearth of the home. That's where the action happens. That's where all the meals are prepped and served, and the family connects. So it makes sense to be generous in that size. And the contrast is, of course, that Table Mesa, you need to add $1 million, right, to be 15 minutes to the west in Table Mesa, and Indian Peaks is an excellent location for people that are a little bit more on a budget. And this would have worked really well for our clients had they been looking at the time. But they're now looking. So if you happen to have a listing coming up or you're a seller thinking about listing your home, reach out to us because this would have checked all the boxes for our client all day long.
Yeah. A nice one. Okay.
Our last one is 810 37th Street. And I almost didn't include this one except for the fact that I would have bought it. So it is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, really close to the university. It's in the Baseline neighborhood, and the home had been listed for $750,000, and it was under contract within a couple of days, and it closed within 3 weeks at $5,000 over list with a $2,400 concession, which sounds like a furnace or repair or something pretty minor. And it looks like it's a little 1,323 square feet. Means it's a little bigger than your typical Baseline ranch.
I bet you that's the garage conversion.
It's probably exactly. It's the garage conversion because there's 0 garage, so that's likely.
Oh, they fit a bathroom in there too.
Yeah, they squeezed the bathroom in there. May or may not have been permitted, but this is like a good little cash cow for student rentals. And because it's sitting on a big, I would say bigger than typical, slightly bigger than typical, 7,100, almost 7,200 square foot lot. This is it just checks all of the boxes, and $750 is the right price, and somebody wanted it a little more, and they paid a little more for it. And I think they got a good deal. This is priced right, moved fast, done. And if you're ever shopping for a house like this and you see that garage conversion, it's probably better to just assume the garage was converted without a permit and enjoy the use of that room and the bathroom that's attached to it, because this is going to be a little rental cash cow. Almost certainly. Or maybe it's a CU parent that bought it for their kid to live in for 4 years or 5 years if they're unlucky. Or maybe
you beat an HOA doing this over an attached. Yeah.
Yeah. I would prefer to own this than an attached without a garage. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say though, given that the garage conversion is visible from the street, I would be surprised if it wasn't permitted. The unpermitted ones are usually hidden. Right? Or is that Should I not be making that assumption?
I would not make that assumption, Hamish.
Okay.
It could have been done before the city was as aggressive, and it doesn't mean it's grandfathered in, by the way. So if you go to get... The city could bust you. I don't know on what principle they would, but it's better to not make a ruckus if that's what you want. I know of a listing where they tried to retroactively permit a garage conversion, and they're now... I think they're required to bring it up to 2024 code, which... means tearing off all the drywall, redoing all the electrical and all the insulation, and they don't want to do it. So they, today you used to have to need 2 parking spaces, one of which was the garage and one of which was the driveway. And you cannot put 2 cars tandem nose to tail in the driveway. And that's how they were keeping people from doing garage conversions. And only a handful of the lots were wide enough to give you a side-by-side driveway. And it was such shenanigans by the city to try to keep garage conversions from happening. Why, I don't know, but that was a thing for a long time and no longer is a thing. So I think this is a great little buy for an investment ranch in the Baseline neighborhood.
Yeah. That brings us to shameless self-promotion. Or should we recap our folks looking for that Shoshone type of house? Do we want to rapid fire all of the things on the notes? I kind of put them there, but timing wise.
You threw out a bunch, Hamish, and I think I'm only going to talk about one. And we're going to talk about Grapewood. So we have a listing coming on probably this week. And although it could end up getting rented, which will take away our listing. And Hamish, maybe you could update me on that later. But I think we're going live tomorrow with this. I've got my work cut out for me to get this happening. But it's a great little technically it's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath. Or is it technically it's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath townhome with a pool, very functional, right in the center part of town. Would work for a young family or young professionals or people downsizing. And it has a 1-car covered parking space. If that's your thing, it's probably going to be priced $650 is likely, or $645, something like that, which makes it pretty aggressively priced for the competition. If that interests you, reach out, and you might be able to get to it pre-market.
Yeah, it's a neat little spot. Floor always gets compliments, and then that bedroom's that's a 4th bedroom. It's got a closet.
It's got a cute little patio area in the back.
Yeah,
it's got a nice neighborhood feel. It will likely
previous
be
tenants
available.
loved it. Yeah, I may send it to them, the listing, and be like, I don't know if you guys can, but it's there. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about it in the news.
I know we briefly covered the South Boulder Rec Center. We were talking more or less about maybe a little bit of austerity to do with it, but there is kind of a protest, town hall. Osman?
Okay, Hamish, you're really struggling with this, so I'm going to save you. So this week's city council meeting, which is March 5th at 5:30, there's an effort to organize people to speak in front of council during open comment about the need to preserve, protect, and reinvest in the South Boulder Rec Center. And our form of government has a very strong city staff. Our city's professional city manager has a lot of power, and it appears to be that those in power have decided that this is not worth preserving, even though the building isn't really that old. The cost to maintain the facility is no longer is worth the investment, and they want to shut down the rec center, which benefits the entire Table Mesa community. It has swimming pools, it has fitness rooms, the high school practices, the swimming there. Like, it's a really big deal. It's a huge part of our community, and for some reason the city doesn't want to continue to maintain it. Meanwhile, we're spending enormous amounts building alpine balsam for city offices, where we have AI efficiencies coming to bear, where we have, like, why do we need, people want to work from home, okay? Like, more city offices doesn't make any sense to me, and taking away something that's so beloved in South Boulder.
Community building.
It's frustrating. So there's an effort to organize people to go speak and stand in front of council, even if you're not going to speak. And by the time you hear this, it's going to be over. So I just bring it to your attention because it's really important to understand what's going on in the community. And if you're buying in Table Mesa, you should know that rec center may not be there in a few years if the residents are unsuccessful. And boy, the residents are angry about this. So it would not surprise me if they are able to stall the decommissioning of the rec center and get the city to invest in it. And again, I just feel frustration that the city is investing in offices while depriving the residents of, I think the city staff
services. Yeah.
Honestly, most of the city staff would rather work from home than go into the office. And even if it's a brand new office, that doesn't change the fact that they're driving to Alpine Balsam, which has no parking, and they'd rather stay 2 days a week at home. So why are we putting all that money in when we can just fix the rec center and benefit residents as well, not just city staff? And because our city is so, the power in the city is so heavily slanted toward the city manager, I think that's why you end up with our priorities like this, that priorities that benefit staff, not residents. And I think it's time to look at how that's gotten out of balance. And this is an example of how it's out of balance.
And you will be there yesterday for the listener, but tomorrow for us.
Yeah, well, maybe we could...
Oh, you're going to watch it. Okay.
I like to watch it because the things I say at city council meetings, I kind of would not be...
In any less free of a country, you would be on a list.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll go in person. I've already voiced my displeasure to people, and we're putting this on the podcast, and I don't know. Yeah, I think people should write to their city council people. That may be more effective than showing up in person. Do both. Write a well-worded and thoughtful message to our council people and push them to say no to the city manager who wants to shut this down. And if Parks and Rec needs more money, then invest in Parks and Rec.
And for what it's worth, oh no, not for what it's worth, but I watched the Westminster city live stream for city council. It's every Monday, and they don't have the option for you to show up in person anymore. You only phone in. So nice little bit of news, though. Hopefully, I mean, it looks like they've found some funding in 2025 to keep maintaining it to an extent, but there is no long-term plan for the rec center. So it hangs in the balance.
Yeah. South Boulder Rec Center has reached the end of its life cycle. I don't think so.
I mean, it then lays eggs and its offspring grow because it's got a life cycle.
Well, no, I mean, look, it's true that some buildings are obsolete, but that doesn't mean that we tear them down. And reinvesting in an older building that is so beloved by the community and so heavily used by the community, I think makes way more sense.
Just wonder if they kneecapped themselves with all the legislation about deconstructing buildings and things,
Parks and Rec has a $30 million budget. I just don't get why. I mean, maybe I'll spend more time reading the master plan and the notes here, but I think the city needs to figure out how to save this because it's going to really piss off Table Mesa residents, which I think it may cost council. I think it should cost council some seats, right? I think you really need to note who's voting in favor of decommissioning this, in favor of more offices, and vote accordingly. All right, Hamish, I think that's good. Let's talk about carve-outs. You should launch. I want to hear about your classical music.
So this entire time, I've been listening to a group called the Cinematic Orchestra. And they've got a few popular songs, but for the most part, they're commissioned by production companies to create soundtracks. And so I started off listening to, it's called like The Crimson Mystery, I think. It's a documentary on Disney about flamingos. But it's somewhat classical and ambient in nature. And then they've got all sorts of crazy experimental randomness. And then they've got... it's this one song that I think pretty much everybody will know. It's probably in Grey's Anatomy because it's a tearjerker. It's called To Build a Home. But the Cinematic Orchestra, I mean, I've been a fan of theirs, and I can't really put a finger on why. But, you get like your listener or your Spotify Wrapped and things, and I'm always like pretty up there for Cinematic Orchestra. And wrapping that into classical music as a whole, it is kind of, it makes sense, and it's like a no-duh thing how music affects your mood and your productivity and things, but classical in general really does just kind of puts you in a flow state a little bit easier. It makes things much more calm and clear. Occasionally I like my hype music that gets me, you know, like feeling really good and bouncing, but to really buckle in and get things done, just putting on something easy listening and somewhat ambient, it's impressive how impactful it is.
Well, I'm not sure how many seconds you were allowed to have a sample of a song, but I just listened to "Build a Home" while you were talking, and it's a very well known song.
Yeah,
I thought it was Coldplay, but it's not. It's
right, or like the Fray
Orchestra,
or one of them.
But if you could put that in the background of while you're talking, I think that'll really resonate for people. Cause,
I think we could do like 15 seconds. So I'll do like a 15, bullet.
So do like 10 seconds so we don't get dinged.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that is. I agree. Music is so essential to how we feel, and it's so funny. Like I did this little goofy video yesterday on my Instagram story, which may still be there, and I was just taking a few shots while Leo and I were cooking dinner. And then I threw this really goofy song on it that I was looking for Chef from the Muppets, and I found this really goofy song, and I put that in the background, and it's such a funny feel that like the emotions from this 7 seconds are so funny.
I'm watching it right now. I love putting just like it's not insane or anything, but it completely changes the vibe of the video, and
Totally.
It's almost satirical in nature. Yeah, I love that.
I've been doing that for fun in my Instagram stories for a while, and I've gotten some feedback from friends that are like, your Instagram stories make us laugh because you have to have the sound on. And then it really changes the experience when you have the sound on. And of course, it's Instagram stories, so there's like 12 people that look at it, but it's still fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And
all right.
Because of that, Osmond's Instagram will be linked in the description.
Sure,
below.
You can link my personal Insta. Mostly it's work-related stuff, but the stories are not. The stories can be whatever it's my old want to take photos of my sandwich. That's what I posted a lot of photos of back in the day, and it's my story. So, all right, let me talk. Thanks, Hamish, for that. Were you complete with your...
I'm complete, yeah.
Okay. My Carveout is a little different this week. And as most of my clients know, I have a pretty active involvement with an event out in the Black Rock Desert called Burning Man. And I volunteer with a 501c3 that does a lot of healing services at these festivals around the country, not just the big event, but the regionals. And it's a really well-run organization. Board members are all women. It's and service vets are also part of our board.
Cool.
And last year we really got our stuff rocked, and this camp's been around a long time, but the weather really rocked our stuff. And this year we've raised about $20,000 to replace a bunch of the infrastructure, the tents, maybe other things, showers. And I've gone down the road of choosing. We're going down the road. It's not done yet. Like this process. Okay, so for those of you, so it's such an interesting experience because it's a leadership lab. You can't fire people. It has all sorts of constraints on how you treat others within both this nonprofit and the Rangers, of which I'm a member of the Rangers, that help. It's sort of a volunteer organization, a community mediator organization. And it's such an amazing leadership lab. And the types of people and the caliber of people we have showing up and participating is honestly mind-blowing. And now that I've been part of so many different types of organizations over the years, what astonishes me is how we're getting all of these people and how effective we are, all of it for free. Right? Like these are people that are not devoting their time and energy because they want to make money. They're devoting their time and energy because this event has changed their lives, and they are high caliber driven people up to things. And it calls me to a higher standard of performance in my work with House Einstein, as well as my board position with the dairy and my board position with, well, technically I'm not on the board of this other 501c3, but I'm heavily involved. And we're currently trying to figure out the right tents. And I think we've drilled it down to the Celina master tent, which, when you find, it's sort of like discovering an entire industry that exists that you didn't know anything about.
Totally.
Right? And it turns out there's this giant industry that makes commercial wedding tents and other types of structures that are designed to last 15 to 20 years. And they've sort of nailed their market. They know their pricing. And it's like this, the logistics of, it can't just have this delivered to the event, right? Like we have to have it delivered somewhere and then trucked on. We have to know how to assemble it with a large group of people the week before the event, take it down in half the amount of time after the event. Meanwhile, dealing with one of the most challenging environments to live anywhere, right? You're on a dried up lake bed in the middle of Nevada in August and September, right? It's a rough environment. And so all the logistics, it's like an orchestra that the planning begins at the end of the year and then really picks up steam from now through about June. And the meetings that are involved and the people that are involved and the effort is just, I don't know, it's poetry in motion.
You're building a city, yeah.
Yeah, we're building a city. So
it's an orchestra.
It's totally a carve-out in that it has not a lot to do with real estate other than the steps and the way the puzzle gets put together every year is just, I don't know, it calls me to a better performance in my own life, be a better leader, be a better team member, be a better volunteer. And that process is kicking off, is now kicking off, with the Celina master tents that you can link to as likely one of the chosen, the master high roof is likely where we're going to end up. Not the regular height, the high roof. And the reason for the high roof is
that the one with the peaks?
It has peaks and it traps the hot air up there. Because if we have lower, the lower hot air getting trapped is going to cook us. But if it's got a tall roof, it'll trap more of the hot air above us and it'll be cooler down below. Yeah,
that's a good idea. There's it's almost like a meme now on Instagram Reels. There's this company like Belzona, I guess, and they make products for industry professionals. Is like the most broad but blanket thing that they do. And they have these incredibly high energy, like narrated install videos on how to like mix their epoxy to seal a pipe that's leaking in the gas line, or something like that. And now it's like all the comments are like, "Oh, I love it."
They make epoxy to seal a gas line. That seems like a horrible
stuff
idea.
Like that. No, I mean, like their stuff is, from what I can tell, like legit. But like things like that are like, this is our, if you're in a pinch and you need to seal this before you can go and do a full line replacement, here's how you do it. But the memes are like, or the comments are like, it's a bad day to be a leaking water pipe, when Belzona 50156 comes through. And like, that's because, they're so specific, but it's just such an oddball industry. And so, yeah, Celina master tents, why not? I'd almost call these marquees. I can't remember. A marquee?
I think it's marquee, but...
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, everyone. That is the end of this week's podcast. You have squandered another 2 hours with us, and we so deeply appreciate your listening and watching. The comments we get in person as well as online mean the world to us. As, of course... the new clients that we've developed relationships with who found us through the pod. If you like what you hear in the podcast and you'd like to learn more, you can visit any of our social media channels. You'll find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. And you can also visit houseeinstein.com. That's our primary website. Which could be rolling out a new version of Not in the Distant... okay, we'll talk about that later.
I mean, that's enough said. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.